We continue with part 2 of our 3-part interview with the cyber hygienist, Dontae Tyler. Bridget, do you have any questions right now for Dontae?
Yes, I know my background is a little messy today, but by being an elderly lady, I had a few questions on behalf of the elders concerning cybersecurity or the work that you do. I wanted to know how senior citizens or elderly feel about, you think they feel about engaging with cybersecurity, and what measures could they take, knowing that we are not that, like y'all young folks, advanced in this security stuff, but we're learning each day. What would you suggest to those retirees or senior citizens or the aunties and the grandmas that we're trying to catch up with you guys with technology, but what would be some of your suggestions as you would even, just say you would do a workshop or something for them, what would you want them to focus on?
Well, Bridget, you're in luck because cyber hygiene can be taught to all levels, and we actually have hosted cyber hygiene for senior citizens previously, where we have gone out to facilities and done one-on-one training with a group of citizens to educate them, of course, on cyber attacks in a fashion that they can understand, right? Because we do understand cybersecurity can be a very complex subject, but it also can be broken down. And at OQP, we like to use a lot of metaphors. So we do offer that training to senior citizens. And I would say just a few different mitigations that I know that would drastically help seniors is, number one, is enabling what they call multi-factor authentication, right? Which is a strategy to have a defense in depth approach to cyber attacks, right? So multi-factor authentication means traditionally, when you go to a system, if there is a username and password on the machine, you have to effectively enter the correct username and the password, and then you're authenticated to the system, right? That's how it works, like a bank account or something. But imagine if you put the username and you put the password in, you hit enter, and then it takes you to a screen that says, hey, enter this special code that we sent to a device that you trust. All right, so that more oftentimes than not, that is through a text message. So you'll get a text message on your phone of a 6-digit code that will only last about 5 minutes, and you enter that in. And if you enter the correct 6-digit code, then you're let into the account, right? So that's that is one of the top things not only seniors can do, but anybody who uses a smart device can do. And then the second thing is, I would say, one of the things that I can do, or if I were a senior, one of the things that I could do, in addition to multi-factor authentication, is not using certain technologies, right? I think sometimes our grandkids and children may buy us these fancy devices, right, that is going to make life simpler and easier, but then that's connected to the internet, and then you got to use a password, and then you put in your information in there. So I think seniors should only use technology for what they need it for, and then anything outside of that, they shouldn't use it.
Thank you. That's great advice. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I love that Bridget asked that question, because you always hear that senior citizens are some of the most vulnerable groups as it relates to especially online cyber attacks. I've seen some stats before that talks about, I think it's like billions or hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that are lost because of various fraud associated with, getting into people's access to bank accounts. Seniors thinking that they're paying bills, but it's really going to some fraudulent company. Seniors paying for things for items that they never received. So there's a lot of different ways that they're being attacked. And as we know that there's usually limited income associated with it. But what are some of the signs that you think that someone should look out for to recognize if they may have been a victim of a cyber attack?
Yeah, that's
Mm.
a good one.
To follow up on what you mentioned, Keena, that number is actually 1.7 billion people were scammed. That's not just seniors, but I think that
Hmm.
that was a report from the FBI in 2021 was 1.7 billion, and that was reported. All right, so we got to think about the ones that weren't reported due to, embarrassment or just not taking the proper steps. But some of the early signs of indicators of compromise, uh, hackers are usually financially motivated. All right, so I would say the first thing you probably should check is your bank account, for unusual transactions, unusual activity, credit cards, savings, check-ins. Um, and then the second thing I would look for as an indicator of compromise is computer performance. This is not always a good indicator, right? Because some people do have tons of files and stuff on the computer that makes it run slow, but a piece of malware on a system tends to take up a lot of computer utilization most times when it's doing whatever it's supposed to do. So you can also look at, your performance degradation of your machine. I would also say I've heard stories of people getting repeated multi-factor authentication codes to their trusted device, but they're not trying to log in, which is a good indicator that someone is trying to log into your account and it's not you.
Yep.
All right. I would also say another indicator of compromise is scammers or what we call black hat attackers prey on one of the oldest tricks in the book, which is a form of social engineering, but I'll just deem it as just urgency, right? Like you have to do this right now. You have to act right now. Right? You have to send this invoice right now. I always tell my clients, if it doesn't feel right, start asking some questions, right? Maybe even use a out of bound connection, piece of communication. Meaning, if someone's contacting you on the laptop, why don't you pick up the phone and call them on their personal cell phone and ask them, "Is this them?" Why are you asking me to do an unusual kind of transaction? So those are some of the indicators that I would look for early on that are going to tell you that something's not right.
It's funny, kind of looking from a proactive perspective and coming from the credit card payment space. Even let's just say from a credit perspective, I tell a lot of young people, as soon as you're able to, go ahead and keep your credit reports frozen. Because if something happens, it takes too much investigation and too much time to undo something. So just keep it frozen. And other tools that they have in place, let's just say for a lot of credit card companies, is you can go ahead and immediately lock your card if you can't find it. You can usually log on and lock your card, but also you can also there are controls where you can put spending limits. So like you can put a spending limit of, let's just say, no more than $75 on a card. So let's just say if someone hacks your card or something, that they're not going to hit more than $75. So even though there are some liability protections, when someone steals your card, you can reduce some of the risk, associated with it up front.
That is true.
Um,
Cyber hygiene, the book I actually write, those are some of the mitigation techniques that I teach in the book. Just simple as what you just explained.
yeah, because you have to be proactive because nobody has time. No one has time to expose themselves as a potential victim because it takes too much to undo whatever gets done.
Yep.
You know, how often do you suggest that people should probably update their passwords? What are your recommendations for creating strong and secure passwords?
Definitely.
Passwords, and how often do you think people should? What are
Oh,
your recommendations as far as length? And you address that, and then how often? What are your recommendations for creating strong and secure passwords, and how often should they update it?
Right. So 14 characters, definitely numbers and letters and symbols. And using an alias email address. I mean, why I'm walking you through this is because this is how when passwords get compromised through a data breach and then they get posted on the dark web, they take those accounts, those username and passwords, and then if you're selected, then they try to brute force all of your accounts with those harvested passwords that they got from a stolen data breach. So
Okay. So
if
that's
a
how that works.
if a Macy's account that you don't really care about gets breached, well, that password that they're going to try to use on your bank account ain't going to work, right? Because it's not the same password, right? So definitely having I like to call them levels of passwords. Maybe like have
Yep.
three to five different passwords that you can remember, that without a shot of a doubt I can remember these passwords. Now it's gonna be one of these five, and I don't know which one, but it's gonna be one of these five passwords. And I would say the higher, after I would say the higher you go, maybe the Macy's password is only 9 characters, right? But when you're talking your bank account that got, majority of
Yep.
your money, you want to make that one 14 characters, right? You probably want to change that one. I'm saying every year because most banking systems have a option check that they make you change the password every year. But if some people are more paranoid than others. Quarterly is really good. That's when we often do cyber hygiene readiness trainings. We come in quarterly. So I would definitely say also invest into a password manager. I think that that kind of limits the amount of passwords that you have to remember. So many logins for so many applications that we use, even the regular person. They have maybe 30 or 40 applications that they use with different passwords for each one of them, which is often why people use the same password. A password manager can help with that. A password manager, think of it as a one big encrypted lockbox that has all of the passwords in it. And you need a master password to open up the password manager, and then you can go in the password manager and it has your username and password stored. It's readily available. So
It's fun. It's funny you said that because I was actually going to ask you a question of what do you think about some of the password wallets like Google and Samsung have.
um, I
So yeah,
I am
go ahead.
I am for password managers, and I say that because I just understand how complicated it can get when you're logging into 5 different applications that you need to
Yep.
support, right? So I'm just like, I'm not going to keep remembering each one of these passwords, and then pretty soon they all end up the same one, right? So I'm a fan of using the password manager. Where I kind of draw the line is I don't like password managers from that are in browser, right? I don't like that, right? For a few reasons. If I can access it, that means an attacker can access it. So if he's somehow able to compromise my session, and a session is think about a tab when you open up a Google Chrome browser, and some of us have like 50 of those tabs open. Each one of those are considered a session, right? There's a clock ticking in the background that's talking to the server, right? Anytime something changes, it's talking back. You make a request. So if he's able to compromise your session through, I don't know, any kind of attack, then he's able to get into that Google Chrome password manager the same way that you are and able to compromise your account. So I recommend using a password manager like LastPass that has a web extension feature, but it is its own application, if that makes any sense. And I hope I was able to articulate that.
I understood where you were going.
Yeah.
hope,
Yeah.
hope I didn't get too technical there.
No, that was good. That was good. I got a question too now. This has been bothering me. All right. And when I use my wife's, she has a desktop, all right, running Windows. Okay. So when I'm logging out, if I use hers, she got a big screen, So anyway, when I'm using hers and I log out, I get this message, other people are using, somebody else is using the system, all right? And there's nobody else. She's logged out. There's nobody else but me and her. So once she's logged out and I go to log out, it says somebody else is using the system. Can you explain that to me?
What that sounds like is, A, are you turning the computer off?
Yeah, I'm shutting down.
Okay, yeah, so that sounds like maybe the root account is logged in. That's one of the things that I often tell anyone that you shouldn't use the root account unless you're doing root activities, right? So a root account is just, I would describe it as an account that has all of the privileges and permissions to do anything on the computer.
Oh, that's equivalent to a super user, right? That's what we used to call it.
Right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
a power
Or like the
user.
admin?
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly what a root user is. You should not be just accessing your computer on the root account. I mean, think about that, right? That you are surfing the laptop on the root account on a Chrome browser. The browser gets compromised, then he ultimately compromises the root account. Now he has control of the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Yeah,
would,
we don't.
you don't want that, right? So
Yeah, I was about to say we don't want that.
but I think, Walt, maybe you should make sure that all of the accounts are logged out fully and not just sleep or
Yeah.
just in a sleep state. I would make sure that they're fully signed out and the applications that they're using are signed out.
You know what came to mind too is some versions of Windows have it where you just switch accounts.
Right.
Yeah,
So if you're just switching an account as opposed to fully logging out and then going to your account, it may say that there's an active user, but it'll usually tell you who the person is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It just says someone is still on, basically.
Someone.
Yeah, I'm just paraphrasing the best I can. Yeah. So yeah, I always wondered about that. So okay, I'll double check that tomorrow. All right. Thank you. Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
I know, Dante, I know back in the day that, people would talk about this a lot, especially with so many applications, right? When you're logging in or you're creating a new account, right? Let's just say whether just any type of new application that you don't have a previous account that exists. If there is no S at the end of the HTTP, is that something we should still look at in today's climate?
I do.
Or is that some?
I do. But anyway, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, same thing. Here, me as well. Especially, and the reason why I'm saying that is because where you have cases that people are using some of the same passwords, right? In my head, I'm thinking if it doesn't have the S at the end of it, then it's potentially not a secure environment, and someone could, you're thinking you're just logging into someone's new application, but they could be using it to steal your username and your password and try to share that across other applications. Am I making sense at all?
Oh, you are, and this is one of the things that we teach, and one of our foundational starter cyber hygiene courses is, security essentials and fundamentals, and that is identifying the lock screen up there next to the URL and making sure that there is an S at the end of HTTP. And for people who are wondering maybe like what that is, the S stands for Secure Sockets Layer. It's a protocol that is attached to that HTTP, which is an internet protocol, I would say. And what it means is secure socket layer means that your connection is not secure. And when they say not secure, meaning that maybe doesn't have a certificate, right? Websites that issue certificates from authorities by these governing bodies of the internet that when you start a website, you have to go get a certificate that says, hey, I'm a good website. I'm registered with this domain, right? This is what we do, right? It's just part of when you set up a website. Some of us may get service from providers who often handle the SSL certificate for us, so you may not, come into contact with it, but it also signifies that not only has that website been registered, but they have a current certificate, right? Which is like not outdated, because these certificates have a stamp, right? They have an expiration on them. So, Akina, having that S at the end of the HTTP is a good indicator that that website is safe to surf, but that does not mean that you should fully trust it.
All right, so this question comes up first. What are the most common types of cyber attacks that individuals and small businesses face today?
Some of the most common types of cyber attacks that individuals and small businesses face, I would say phishing is probably the number one common cyber attack that individuals and businesses face. And phishing comes in different forms: emails, text messages, phone calls. Sometimes we may even, you know, somebody may even try to come knock on your door and pretend to be somebody to get access to whatever that resource that they're seeking. For businesses, this looks like what they call BEC, business email compromise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone sending a email to the secretary on pretending to be the CEO, asking them to transfer money, or a fake invoice from a company. That's why you want to definitely check websites to make sure that they have that S at the end, so that you know that encryption, that connection is encrypted. And then also, identity theft is huge. There are so many data breaches every single day. I hate to say it, but I believe truly everyone's identity, even the bad guys, their identity is on the dark web, because their data has been compromised in a healthcare breach, police department breach, a business breach of a huge distributor for mass products or something like that, right? So definitely phishing, business email compromise, identity theft.
Okay, let's say with the pitching, let's go back to pitching. You got an email. Now, if you open an email from a scammer, you have to click on a link or something within that email, right?
You know what? Well, I wish it was that easy sometimes. Most times, yes, you do have to click the malware for it to be activated. But there are forms of malware out there that don't need intervention. It's just the way that it is coded up. It may get executed through you actually doing an action that you want to do, but because that action you want to do uses another service, now that is activated. But I would say a large percentage of phishing, particularly email phishing, you have to click the attachment in order for the malware to infect your device.
Oh, so what you're saying is is that usual that they will have an attachment? Is that the majority of them, these phishing emails?
Yes, most times it comes in a form of an attachment, but I've also seen phishing be in a picture. All right, so just like a unsuspecting, someone sends you a picture, you click the picture to enlarge it. Well, you activated malware when you click the picture. All right, so
Okay.
Wow.
doesn't always come in a form of a email attachment. Most malware does come in like a .pdf or a .doc file,
Right.
or a .text file. But I've seen some sophisticated attacks where it's been a picture or something like very unsuspecting. You click it, or like a hyperlink, right? Something like a word that's been hyperlinked that takes you to another site.
All right. So, Bridget, you have any questions?
Okay. My question was going back to a little bit more of that your cybersecurity advice. In our homes, we have various types of devices like our Ring cameras and Nest and Alexa and Siri and online TV streaming. And sometimes, they tell us we can merge it to get maybe Alexa to tell you that Ring, somebody's approaching. How safe is that since we're sharing so many passwords with so many devices? And is that an easy target for cybersecurity? It means, people to get in there and get our stuff. The simple word.
Now that's another good question, Bridget. One of the easiest mitigation strategies that I could give that's very practical that you can do right now as a senior or anybody. With those devices that you mentioned, like an Alexa, a TV, some people's washing machines even connect to Wi-Fi now, right? You can wash clothes while you're at home, or turn the dryer on, right? I recommend putting those devices on, like, I'm trying to explain this, but so on a router that you have at your house, you can segment the network, right? So you can have, right? You ever seen guest network, Bridget? Like when you go to someone's house, they have guest network and then they have their network, right? What you can actually do is put all of those devices like the Ring camera, Alexa, your TV, put all of them on the guest network.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And then you would put your laptop or your personal devices that you deem have valuable information to you, whether that be pictures, financial data, whatever. You put that on your network, your home network. So what that does is that segments theoretically the network from each other. So if the guest network is compromised, now the home network isn't easily compromised, right?
Okay.
Not saying that he isn't able to, an attacker won't be able to move over to that network, but you can slow the attack down. I hope I did a good job of
You
like
did. I didn't know that.
Now, for
Wow.
clarity,
yeah.
Could someone use an extender as well as, I don't want to say a separate network, but would that satisfy the same? Let me ask the question now that it's a little clearer. Could someone use an extender, right? You know how you have a Wi-Fi extender
hmm
and move those types of devices on the Wi-Fi extender? Would that serve as the same purpose, or is it different?
Well, Wi-Fi extended, to my knowledge, is for you to the range, right? These devices often go off of frequencies, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you use a Wi-Fi extender to be able to extend that connection of wherever that router is to you so that you have a good signal and you can have a good connection. Go ahead.
I was wondering because usually there's a different like SSID and password, so I didn't know if it would satisfy as the same thing.
No, I think it's more of a repeater. And
Okay.
when I say a repeater, like it just repeats the signal. But that
Mm-hmm.
router itself, you can go onto the console. And we teach this in cyber hygiene as well. Like we walk through practically how to log into your Xfinity router, whoever your service provider is, and go through the settings to show you how to segment that network. Another good thing you could do is actually enable this feature, what they have on almost any router. It's called MAC filtering. And MAC filtering MAC stands for media access control. So every device ever created has a unique identifier on it called a MAC address.
yeah, I've seen
It's
those.
how routers, switches are able to communicate with that technology to say that this is this iPhone and it wants to go to Google's address and it's going to tell you how to get there, right? So if you enable MAC filtering on your router, what that would do is if the router doesn't recognize that device's MAC address, because MAC addresses are very unique to a device, it won't let it on the network.
So I was chuckling when you said that because I totally forgot about that when my kids were younger, right? You know, especially during the middle school, 10 years ago, middle school, such and such age where the kids started to become a little savvier. You know, they're talking to their friends about how to crack the code kind of a thing.
hmm
And everything that was on my network was locked down by a MAC address.
Yeah,
Not only locked down on a MAC address, you had parental control. So at a certain time, yes, your PlayStation went offline.
nice.
And so yeah, so it was like, your friends come over or whatever, and it's like, man, I got to call my mom to see if she can open up the connection because it went off at 8 o'clock.
Okay,
No,
now,
that
Or like if there was too much yelling going on with playing games, I would just go turn it off, and then I would wait a couple of seconds because I know I would hear, oh, it's so much fun, so much fun.
okay, I do have. Let me just clarify this. When you say segment, all right, is that or you segmented it on the Wi-Fi network, right? Okay, you know how you go
yes.
in and you identify your Wi-Fi password, well, whatever. You identify your Wi-Fi because it comes up as signals. So you see, let's say Walter or whatever. Okay. Now the guest network. How do you define a guest network? You know, if you don't see that,
Well,
I don't see it as part of my drop down when it's looking for all the the Wi-Fi.
this is why we teach in cyber hygiene clinics that we put on. If it's that series where we're talking about home defense, we would actually show you how to go into your router or your settings. I know
Mm-hmm.
that I've seen people that have the Xfinity app on their phone that has the a console for you to go on, enable and disable certain features. You can go on. I know for Xfinity, I've seen it done. You can go on the Xfinity app and enable guest network or disable guest network.
Ah, okay. I'm on what am I on? Cablevision, Altice.
The They have I'm more than certain that they have a feature, whether it's on the web interface, on the phone app, or you may physically have to go log into the router from the internet.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
I'm sure that there's a toggle that says guest on, guest off. It has to be.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. I
So
didn't know.
when I used to have Optimum, it was based on your router. So you logged into your router that what is it 192.168.1.1 or but then
Yeah.
eventually they created an app or you can go into like your Nighthawk app and turn it off and on.
Okay, now I'm learning a lot here. I'm just like the senior user, the audience that we're going out to. All right. Okay. Can you describe some simple steps? Now, this may be redundant. All right. So let me just qualify that non-technical users can take to improve their cybersecurity posture. And I think you touched on that earlier, but let's go through it again, please.
Some of the very simple things that any user can do at any level in cybersecurity to improve their cyber hygiene, definitely turn on two-factor authentication. I
Okay.
just read this morning that United Healthcare, which is their largest or one of the largest providers of healthcare in America, they were hit with a ransomware attack back in January that disrupted a lot of its partners, some of its partners being like CVS, major hospitals that handle, prescriptions and just all type of surgeries. Well, United Healthcare found, and this was this morning actually. I think the
Oh
CEO
yeah,
had to
yeah,
go in
yeah,
front of
yeah, yeah. They paid the
he had to
ransom.
go in
Yeah,
front of Congress and get
yeah.
grilled. Other business owners, big or small, should take, should pay attention to that because he was called in front of Congress to answer these questions, and they found that this attack could have been prevented if they had multi-factor authentication enabled, right? So
Wow.
that just goes to show you, right? And this is also what I teach and empower in my when I'm hired as a consultant to go into an enterprise organization is that um, it's oftentimes we overlook just the very simple things. It's just like, you know, let's not get too technical yet. Let's probably start at step zero and look at some of the things that best practices that we should be doing that maybe we're not doing the best at because we're so focused on revenue. So it's just, you know, as simple as enabling multi-factor authentication, having a password that's longer than 14 characters takes your likelihood of being hit with a cyber attack and it reduces it drastically. I mean, maybe it was at if you don't have those things enabled, you're probably 70 to 80% likely to get attacked.
Mm.
If you surf the wrong website or you come open up the wrong email address or your credentials are compromised and attack Well, if they got two-factor authentication on and you have a 14 character password, the likelihood of your account getting compromised is going to be super, super, super low. Right. So I do want people to realize that you cannot fully 100% avoid a cyber attack. There's no way. The only way to do that is to not use the internet, actually.
Yeah, I don't think
You
people
know,
would
it's
do
funny
that.
because
Yeah, go ahead.
now that I think about it, and I know we were talking about multi-factor authentication, but I worked for an organization in the last few years, not to lock down any time frame, and in the fintech space, and it dawned on myself and a couple of others. It was like, wait a minute, we've been here like 6 months and they haven't asked us to change our password again. Usually you know how it is. It's every 90 days
Yep,
or
yep,
sometimes every 60
every
days.
night.
It was like 6 months went down the line and I'm like, so they don't do this here? So it's almost like, is it the responsibility of the worker to like check in and go, hey, this is a company where we're potentially at risk. Do you guys want to tighten up a little bit?
Absolutely. And this is Walt goes back to, that first question you asked me about between me and that threat hunter.
Right.
I'm kind of, what to piggyback off what Keena said, coming in and shifting that cybersecurity paradigm to enhance that program, right? Something as simple as, hey, you got to change your password every 90 days instead of every 6 months reduces the chance of, hey, okay, well, somebody hacked us, they stole all our data, but let's say we had it backed up, so we didn't pay the ransom, but they leaked all of our credentials online. Well, if we change passwords every 90 days, probably those credentials that they got are probably old, right? So even decreases the likelihood of an attack happening. I hope I'm able to like make visual sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Matter of fact, I got a notification by I think from Apple. No, I had to do it on my keychain, but I get these notifications sometimes, and they indicate that my credentials have been compromised in a data dump, right? And I see those. So I think what you're saying is if I did this password reset or change every 90 days, then when I see something like that, I don't have to worry. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I don't want to say you don't have to worry, but you can get some peace of mind knowing that you changing that password every 90 days is going to decrease the chances of a successful cyber attack.
But
I don't-
becomes it's a time consuming thing to change the password. I got about 30 or 40 different passwords across various applications and all that kind of good stuff. And I feel what I do is, and you tell me if this is good from your perspective. I put all my passwords when I do a change. I write them down in a notebook. I don't keep them online. All right, I don't keep them in my computer. I keep them let's write it down in a notebook. I think that's a good practice, don't you think?
I'm not against it because I write everything down myself. It's one of the ways that I learn. But I
You
was
guys have you guys have a sprinkler system in your house?
Yeah.
Right next to the book?
what I would say to that, Walt, is because I've had seniors ask me this in the cyber hygiene senior editions that we've done about writing passwords down. And who am I to tell you not to write something down because everything that you do is in this one book. And
Right.
if you forget something, it's in this book. And you can go to this book. What I tell them is don't put truest banking username password, right? Don't make it so easy, right?
Right.
Maybe use a system maybe on one page in the front, just as an example. There are 25 lines. Let's say the first 3 lines is truest, Navy Federal, and another credit union, and then on like one of the last pages of the book you just have these credentials written out, but they're not labeled to anything. So I like I like to think if I'm I don't want to I guess like I said, when a breach happens, like when I'm involved in a breach, whether that's supporting a business or someone compromises my personal, I like to think it's going to be very sophisticated. Like it's going to be somebody who knows what they're doing, right? Someone who probably deliberately is targeting me. You don't want to make it so easy for them, right? So I'm like, man, well, how did they get the password in my Truist account? And I know I wrote my Truist account information in a book that's separate. The username is separate from the password. And how would they even know to get that goes to a Truist account? So they had to connect some dots, right? They got to spend some time trying to crack the code.
Right.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely.
You're making them work for it, huh?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But you know what just came to mind when you were talking about the breach at United Healthcare? It's probably good that, when people hear these things, like let's just say if it was in the news today, and of course we always find out after the fact, right? That it happened in January. That was 4 months ago. So would it be beneficial for anyone who has a United Healthcare account to now go ahead and make and change their password, since they know that they still have the same password? The hackers probably have that. So you know what, let me be reactive and go ahead and change my password, since I know the old one's out there.
I would definitely recommend changing the password, but that United Healthcare attack was, based on what I know, it was a ransomware group that targeted them.
Yeah, the Russians.
Right. And ransomware is a piece of malware that when activated, encrypts all of your data. So encrypt means that it makes the data unreadable, and they lock it with a key that they only have. And you got to think, like a company that huge, they need to be able to access that data, whether that's medical records, invoices. So imagine if they can't access that. So Keena, I wouldn't say that users so much have to worry, because that attack wasn't deliberately targeting them, but more of United Healthcare as a business to steal information. Now, if they stole username and password, they could have possibly stolen that to users' accounts. But more than likely, I like to think that they stole Social security numbers, medical information, things that can be used to then go possibly open up a bank account, or maybe they'll use that information to open up a credit line or something, or
some downstream damage.
Right. So I don't think that one was specifically targeting the users, but I would, if I was a United Healthcare, if I had access to the portal, I would change my password.
I got on my desk, I got two letters from companies that were hacked. All right. And one of them is giving me, I forgot the name of this place, but it's a service that they provide for 1 year. All right. Where you can lock down your credit reports and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking about a credit monitoring service.
Yeah, because
there's a few of them out there.
Right. I got a couple like that where they were hacked. So they sent me this letter telling me I could go onto their site and implement some type of credit monitoring, like you said, from GLG. For whatever else that means. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a notice. It says on the top of the letter, notice of data security incident. All right. Yeah. I got a couple like that. So, what I do is I do go on, because that credit monitoring functionality, that's very expensive. So if they're giving it to me for free, definitely, I freeze my credit report per se. I lock it. I have them lock it. So that's something.
Well, you have to, you want to know which one they lock. Because like I've used them, credit monitoring probably about, I want to say 10, 12 years now.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't have time for.
You got to pay for that.
I don't have time for the shenanigans. Well, the first time I used it, it was because it was free, but then I just continued to use it. It was maybe $16 a month or something like that. And they've added additional products and services onto it. But to me, it gives me a sense of security Then if there's some insurances tied to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes from a locking perspective, they may only lock one credit
Oh, you're
report.
talking about
Like, let's
between
just say they
TransUnion and
they
Equifax?
yeah, they might be tied to a specific one, so you want to find out. But you can easily just go to each of the credit bureaus and freeze your stuff. And if you need someone to check your credit for some reason, you can literally go and unfreeze it for today, lock it tomorrow. It's like, listen, if you didn't get in today, you need to go ahead and run it today, because by tomorrow it's going to be locked again.
Yeah. I got you. All
Yeah, I
right.
may have to see if it's called GOG. Is that what it is? Is that
GLG, George Larry George.
GLG?
Right.
It's funny that people probably have to look into that as well, so that they can make sure that it's a legit company. You know what I mean? Because that might be another way that people are.
Oh, absolutely, man. These scammers are very some of them are very unique and they prey on like aspects or components of social engineering where they uh pretend to be, these good services that are going to help you, and then they steal your information. But I'm going to check out GLG.
Okay.
Maybe it's
Apparently,
I got a
it looks
letter
like
from
it's
them.
Gerson Lehrman Group.
Yeah. I
Gerson
heard of them.
Lehrman Group.
yeah. I'm going to see.
Apparently, yeah.
I'm going to see if they have a affiliate program that or that I could possibly once I check them out and I look at their product and to see if I like them, because I make recommendations at my workshops all the time for people to sign up for services that will help them. So
Okay.
I'll look into
There's
it.
Identity Guard as well.
Yeah,
Identity Guard, which also uses Aura.
no, I've heard Identity Guard, but I've never heard
Yeah.
of GLG before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They represent the customer that got hacked, where they had the data breach, actually. So it's coming from their side. All right. So I just want to go quickly, and I know we're a little pressed for time. In our next episode, we are going to continue our interview with Dontae Tyler, the cyber hygienist. Stay tuned.